Welcome to episode 5. You may have been thinking that this was going to be part 2 of Owen, and we'll still get to that. But before we do that, this episode we actually have a very special and time-sensitive episode to film. I have here the famous Elvis impersonator that for those who go to Asbury, you guys all know and loved watching at TV Drop. If you're not from Asbury, he's an Elvis impersonator, and he's also the guy that stepped up as the father to Trayton in our first episode, who was the one call that saved Trayton's life. And so, without further ado, I'm here to introduce Josh Pack, and he's going to tell you a little bit about himself.
Okay. Well, thank you, Noah, for having me on here today. Yeah, it's been an interesting time. I don't normally seem like the kind of person that would take on the mantle of Elvis Presley. Um, yeah, obviously when you just see me like this, there's no resemblance whatsoever. I always tell people that on a normal day I look more like Homer Simpson than I do like Elvis Presley, and the boy reminds me of that quite often. So, um, yeah, I've been doing this now for in more serious capacity. I've been doing this for about 4 years. Um, when my daughter was first born, I went to my first competition, and man, it's weird. It's funny because, like, obviously, for you guys, I'm not sure how much Elvis you actually listen to on a regular basis. I would imagine it's fairly low. Um, but having said that, there's a whole subculture to this thing. And I remember going to my first competition and just looking around at all these guys who were like asking each other, like, how do you do such and such with your makeup and all this other kind of junk, and thinking, like, what the heck have I gotten myself into? And it was the strangest thing, but at the same time, seeing all those fans packed in there in that arena. I mean, they still do it in arenas. Like, there's enough
Yeah.
people that actually want to go see this stuff. Um, Seeing everybody come in there and just go nuts to celebrate the legacy of Elvis Presley. By the time I walked out, I was like, yeah, I'm doing this again for sure. And it became something that even when we first got Trayton, I thought the boy's probably going to be like, this is the strangest thing I've ever seen in my life. And he has been one of my biggest supporters through all of it. Just like, dude, that's actually pretty stinking cool that you can do something and do it
Yeah.
that well. Um, a lot of my time has been spent just kind of honing and refining what I do, listening to more and more stuff, and just trying to get the subtleties of how Elvis says stuff. Um, and at the same time, I'm trying to grow in pastoral ministry. That's what I normally do. Um, Trying to make sure that I finish up on my current degree plans. I've finished up a master's in divinity at Asbury Theological Seminary and a doctorate of ministry. And now I'm finishing up a dual degree THM, master's in theology, and PhD with Midwestern Seminary as well. So I've got a lot of irons in the fire at any given moment. Um, but finding those ways to balance ministry with Elvis stuff has really been interesting over time. Um, I think the thing that has really been most unique is actually finding that these two things can be intertwined over time. You don't really think about that when you first start off. It seems like these are just kind of two disparate ideas. But then at the same time, you come to a place where you realize there actually is connection in these things, because God creates whole persons and he gives us gifts that sometimes we don't necessarily recognize as being relevant to his work. But at the same time, if you are actually pursuing these things for the glory of God and for the advancement of the kingdom, he can use them for all kinds of things. So yeah, that's me in as succinct a nutshell as I can come up with at the moment.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I think that's really interesting what you were just saying about just using the gift to create that God gave you
Hmm.
and just using it just to be bringing joy to people. And
Hmm.
I think that's really cool. And what was the journey leading up to that? What made you like realize? I know you said like your first competition, you were like, what did I get myself into?
Hmm.
But what was kind of led to that? Like, what made you want to be? I'm a pastor, and I'm gonna go become an Elvis impersonator.
It was odd. Well, of course, the whole thing is odd if we're honest.
Yeah.
I started out when I was 18 years old. I was determined I was going to be an actor,
Mhm.
and and I went out and I actually did some films. There was a Jack Black movie several years ago called Year One, and they filmed that in Louisiana. I was living in Houston,
Yeah.
Texas at the time, and so I was with a talent agency, and they said, "Hey, we're going to get a group of people out there, and we're going to go and just do extra work on that film." So I went, and we had some fun. But after a little while, after one day of filming, I went out with some of the friends of mine from the talent agency to a little bar. They were doing karaoke, and I still had that like good Christian boy kind of mentality. So I was like, well, I can't drink, but what can I do at this bar? So the one thing they had was karaoke, and and I had done karaoke like 6 years before when I was 12 years old, and the only thing I thought I was going to do well, and I butchered it. I was so terrible that I did not do karaoke at all for a long time, which is saying something because karaoke is not really hard. so so when I went up there and they said you should do something. It's fine. And I did the only song I could think of that I actually knew all the lyrics to was "Are You Lonesome Tonight?" So I thought, all right, I'll do it. And I just went up and did the most exaggerated Elvis I could come up with. And by the time I finished, the guy who was running the karaoke was like, dude, I have a guy who actually does that professionally, and you did it better than he did. And I was like, okay, well, I want to find out a little bit more about this whole thing. But I thought he was just being nice.
Yeah.
And my friend had recorded it. And I was like, okay, well, let me hear that. So he played it back, and I went, "Holy crap! I sound like Elvis Presley." Um, so that really just kind of that was something that I had kind of in my back pocket for a long, long time, just thinking, that would be a cool thing to do one of these days. Um, and I didn't really do a whole lot with it for many, many years. I would have like somebody who was a big Elvis fan who would say, "Hey, I heard that you could do a pretty good Elvis," and yeah, sure. So I do it for them. I do it for so and so who was a friend of a friend. And then when I found out they actually had competitions, I was like, I mean, yeah, let's try it out. And so I did. I got like the cheapest suit I could find on eBay and the cheapest wig I could find on eBay, and just went down to Tupelo, Mississippi, which is where he was born. And man, it was awful. You can like that video of me is still online somewhere, and you can actually find the video of my very first time walking out. And the funny thing is, I'm so overweight at the time, and I'm in the leather suit that he uses for the 68 comeback special. And one of the things that you don't necessarily get is when I first walk out there, obviously you don't capture it on camera because this is one of those little details. But I took that big breath to finally start the song, and my belly was so big that I popped my pants open. Like the button on the top of my pants just went pop. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna need to lose some weight if I'm gonna keep doing this. So it's funny because a lot of things actually come back to doing this Elvis stuff, losing weight and getting into some sort of reasonable shape, and you know, trying to go around the country and meet people and all the kind of things that you actually should be doing anyway
Yeah.
have actually happened for me because of this. So I think there's a way in which God has used this both for the people around me and for my own growth
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, that's like on the show. I mean, we call it people of the process, and we talk about oftentimes that there's things that we didn't understand in the moment, and then we're like, man, I don't know why this is happening. I mean, I don't know why my pants
Mm-hmm.
just burst the
Mm-hmm.
button, like, but God uses it to do something really cool,
Yep.
and something that really blesses us and blesses other people, and through this journey and you talked a little bit about it, that God has taught you a lot. But what would you say just some of the things that God has really taught you through your season of being Elvis? And yeah,
Um, I'd say the first thing would be faithfulness.
mhm,
Um, Trying to find some way to use the things that God has given you for His kingdom purposes, and we've talked about that already, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the question that has come into my brain over and over and over again is why this gift?
Yeah.
And I mean, if you don't necessarily ask that question all that much, then I think we can get into a place where we use our gifts for our own
Yeah.
purposes. Um, at the end of the day, they have competitions all over the United States of America, and I've done well.
Hmm.
But the question of should I keep going to uh, until I get to Memphis and I win that title of Ultimate Elvis Tribute Artist, it's all blah. Is that actually what I'm after? And I've kind of come to a place where I go, I don't think that's what I'm after. Ultimately, I think what needs to continue to be the motivating factor behind everything is, am I still using this for the glory of God?
Yeah.
Um, and at the end of the day, if I can say yes to that question, then I'm still ahead of every other guy that's doing this.
Hmm.
Um, and that's, that's not to put down anybody else. It's just, that's the reality is for so many people, it's, I want the glory. I want the recognition. I want, this, but it has to come back to, um, am I doing this for the glory of God? The other thing I would say that has been something God has been working on me through all of this for is humility. Um, there are people who react very differently to Elvis than they do to regular you.
Hmm.
Um, and so being able to separate that from kind of your everyday
Yeah.
is necessary. And there are plenty of people who do this who get to a place where they just walk around with an ego the size of Texas, all the time because everywhere they go, they put the suit on and everybody treats them as if they are the guy. But the reality is, you have to be, I think, centered enough in Christ
Yeah.
that you can recognize. Okay, I'll put it this way: I had a preacher one time who said that they used to play Monopoly with their grandmother, and they said, we would get like ruthless, and we would just have, we'd build these massive empires of hotels and all this other kind of stuff, and they would put so much time and effort into this Monopoly game. And then finally, when it was all said and done, the grandmother would say, and now it all goes back in the box. And they said, you have to recognize that all of the time and effort that we put into things, at the end of the day, it all goes back in the box.
Yeah.
And I think that has kind of helped me to keep things in perspective and go, you know what? It's great that I get to go out there and have fun with fans because they're not my fans at the end of the day. They're Elvis's fans.
Yeah.
Um, And so we are kind of in this whole thing together. It's great that we get to do this. It's great that we get to share in these things together. But at the end of the day, the hair comes off
Yeah.
and the makeup comes off and it all goes back in the box. Um, and so recognizing that God has given me a gift, but it is for the purpose of, his stuff. It's not about me. It's not, any of that. You hear people say that kind of stuff all the time, but until it actually becomes a legitimate part of your understanding. Um, I think that makes all the difference in the world. So, yeah, I would say faithfulness and humility are probably the two biggest things that God has been working on my heart for throughout this whole process.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's real good. Like I think of like with the Elvis movie, like Austin Butler,
Mm-hmm.
all of his interviews since then, he can't turn the voice off.
Mm-hmm.
Like he can't separate who he is from the character he played.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so just being able to separate that like not like the character you play is Elvis, but you're Josh.
Mm-hmm.
And like having that as two separate things. Like that's so good to remember.
Yeah.
And just yeah, like just outside of Elvis, like tell the audience just a little bit more about who you are and
Yeah.
some like things that God's just been just growing you in
Yeah.
this season as well.
Well, I think the thing that um, stands out to me is when I started out in ministry. Um, I had been a performer for a long, long time. I grew up doing theater and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And so characters and what I was able to do, that was kind of how I grounded myself.
Hmm.
Um, and so I remember the first time that I went before a board for ordination for the interviews that they do. At the time, I was in the United Methodist Church, and and I'm 25 years old, and I go before this board thinking, all right, all I got to do is tell them, here's how great I am, which is so funny. You know, you think about from a pastoral kind of perspective, that's not what you really want to do all that much, but that was where my brain was at the time. And I thought if I can just show them what I can do, then they'll move me on, because
Yeah.
that's always how it's been for
Yeah.
me. If I can just show them I can do voices, or I can, perform in this way, whatever it is, then I get the part or whatever it is that I'm looking to do. And and I remember going through a few different things I was able to do, and the guy who was the head of the board of ordination at the time stopped me for a second and he said, "You've told us a lot about what you can do, but tell us a little bit about who you are."
Yeah.
And I couldn't answer the question outside of what I was able to do. And I thought, man, what a terrible place to be. Like, I can't even tell you who I am separated from this stuff. Um, so a lot of my time since then, I guess I spent probably 6, 7 years just learning more about me and how to separate myself from all of this stuff that I had done for a long, long time. So part of the reason I didn't really pursue Elvis for any length of time was just that I was trying to answer those
Yeah.
questions of who I am. So coming back to that question, then, um, I've learned a lot about who I am as a person primarily because of being able to step away from
Yeah.
performance for a time. Um, I think I found myself to be somebody who enjoys first and foremost sitting in the presence of God.
Yeah.
Um, I remember when I did all my degrees across the street. Um, gosh, that sounds egotistical too. When I did all my degrees across the street, when I was spending time
Yeah.
doing my stuff across the street, um, I would go into Estes Chapel fairly regularly, even when I was doing the Doctor of Ministry program. The cool thing about that is that you get students from all over the world who come to this one spot
Yeah.
in Wilmore, Kentucky, and for 2 weeks you study together in the middle of the summer. And a lot of people, because pastors tend to be extroverted, um, basically when breaks would come around or something like that, they would all just go right together, and I would go, "It's not really what I'm looking for. I came here because I needed some refreshment, but not with you guys.
Yeah.
you know, I need some time in God's presence." And Estes has always been a place for me where I could sense the presence of God. Um, and so I would go into that space and just sit and listen, and and actually start to feel what God was saying to me in those moments. Um, so I find myself as one who enjoys sitting in the presence of God, one who enjoys the passionate pursuit of the things of the kingdom, um, and one who I think at the end of the day finds himself comfortably defined by Christ above all else. Um, if I can rest in that much, then then I'm good. All the rest of the stuff falls into place. Um, we've had different times. My wife and I have had different times in life where we were just not at a good place. I'm not talking about our marriage or anything like that. I'm just talking about where we were. We were just not in a good place. Um, the last spot that I served in ministry, both of the pastors who were there before me had left due to sexual immorality and infidelity. And when I heard that, I said, I mean, we got to be prayed up before we go out there,
Yeah.
because there's some spiritual warfare going on around that particular office. Um, and I can't say that we made a massive difference in the church, but I can say that we made it through without giving into that stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
and that goes back to even in those moments of just desperation and feeling like we were in a spiritual wilderness, finding ways to go, God, I trust that you're here with me now, and I trust that you have me here for a purpose and a reason, so that um, the few people who actually are listening will be able to get something out of what we do on a Sunday morning. Um, so I resonate really strongly with Paul saying, that to live is Christ and to die is gain. Because everything in life has to be defined by Him first and foremost. And then when we die, great, we get to be with Him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think like the biggest ministry that you ever get to do, it's bigger than what you do as Elvis, bigger than what you do at the church, is the ministry you get to do to your family.
Mm-hmm.
And just to be able to sitting here, having been able to just see the way that Trayton has grown in the last year and a half, and just as a result of just the love that you and your wife have given him, has been just so encouraging and so really cool to see. Just like I just wanted to just really commend you guys on that and the ministry that you guys have done as a family. So.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, we got the boy. He's over there.
Yeah.
Um, first of all, I can't say that was, you know, me swooping in and being super Christian or anything like that. Uh, I remember finding out where he was, and I looked at my wife and I said, "Look, um, if we don't take him, then he doesn't stand a chance." Um, and so the one opportunity that he has is if we bring him into the house. And so she was like, "All right, well, he's gonna have to recognize that he's our son at that point, and he's gonna have to listen." And I was like, "I don't think he gives a darn what the actual rules are at this point. I think he'd like to have a house and some meals and a bed."
Yeah.
Um, but God brings certain people into our lives at different times for a reason. And when Trayton and I met, we were both miserable. I mean, that's the reality. Both of us were miserable, but we commiserated in a lot
Yeah.
of ways. And um, we know we relate through humor. Um, and matter of fact, I mean, on the way here, I was sharing something that I thought would be funny. So yeah, we've always bonded over humor. I remember um, when I met him, I was going to be a science teacher, and the first day I walked into class, he cracked some joke, and it. But the funny thing about it was, I couldn't tell you what joke he made. It wasn't good. I can tell you that much. Um, it it wasn't a disrespectful joke. You could tell it was all right. Am I able to be free with this person or am I not?
Yeah.
And I can go along with that. I can appreciate that much. So the times that we did feud were when he got too free in the classroom, and then he just started chatting it up in the middle of everything. And I'd go, "I can't even get through a lesson because you can't do that." But um, yeah, Trayton. I have said for a long time now, Trayton is my Timothy, um, and I don't know where the Lord's going to lead him, but I know that he's being led faithfully. Not by me. There are plenty of ways in which I teach him things that probably should not be taught. Um, but yeah, it's been a fun journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we wrap up this episode, I just wanted to just make sure that everyone knows the reason that we're doing this episode, a large part of that is there is a concert coming up soon. If you want to tell them a little details about that.
Sure. We've got a concert coming up on Saturday, March the 8th, at 7 o'clock p.m. The whole reason that we're doing it is because a friend of mine was sitting there with me one day, and he said, "You know what? I've never actually seen anybody do. I've never seen anybody do just that, like simplified, the simplified parts of the '68 comeback special." Um, if you don't know, Elvis did a bunch of really, really terrible movies in the late '50s, early '60s, and it got to a place where his career had just tanked. And so he kind of realized he had to do something that would get it back to the music and help people recognize, like, no, he's considered the king of rock and roll
Mm.
for a reason. And so some of the parts of the '68 comeback special were like these big show pieces, where you have a
Yeah.
bunch of dancers in the background and that sort of thing. But part of what made it so special was where they would strip away the horns and they would take away the piano. It was literally just four guys sitting around playing guitar together. And so that's what we do. Um, it's actually been a really, really special experience because not only have we done really well playing the songs together, our very first rehearsal, we were playing full songs together. If you know anything about music,
Yeah.
that does not happen. Um, so we've been playing through stuff, but there's also like that relationship already with the band members.
Mhm.
And part of what was special about that particular um, moment in Elvis's career was that he's sitting there with guys who had been his guitarists and his drummers from the very beginning. And so you watch them just kind of banter back and forth and do all that kind of fun stuff. Um, but we have that same kind of thing.
Yeah.
We're able to sit and just, cut up and do silly stuff. Um, that's been really cool because the guys are all excited about it too.
Yeah.
We'll have every night we record a song that we're going to put online. You can find all of those on my Facebook page, Kentucky Elvis. Um, every night we record a song, and I'll ask, like, okay, what song do you think we should do? And every one of them has a different answer because, like, every one of them is like, this one was
Yeah.
my favorite from what we did tonight. There's no like clear, oh, this was obviously the best. It's just they're all good, and
Yeah.
we really like it. So, um, yeah, we've got student tickets are $10. General admission's $20. I made sure to cut it in half for everybody.
Yeah.
I would have made it free, but they made me pay for the space, so
Yeah.
they, had to do something.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, come on out, have some fun, listen to some good music.
Yeah. One of those terrible Elvis movies was actually filmed in my hometown of Inverness, Florida. So
Yeah,
any of the people that are watching from Inverness, that's a little shout out for you guys. And those who are here in Kentucky, you don't have to watch those movies. You can just come to this concert.
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 There are several of them that we just kind of sweep under the rug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's one right at the old courthouse near my house. So
Which one was it? Do you know off the
I
top of your
don't
head?
remember. I just know that they have like a big thing of him there. And they're
Okay.
like, this was there. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's Elvis is kind of like Lincoln. I mean, like
Yeah.
everywhere he stepped foot, there's
Yeah.
somebody who's like, by the way, Elvis was here.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. But yeah, before we finish any episode, we like to wrap it up just by just praying for the person who's the guest. And I just wanted to ask, how can I be praying for you?
um, uh, I would say be in prayer that the concert goes well.
Yeah.
Be in prayer that this reaches the people that it needs to
Yeah.
reach. And I'm not talking about ticket sales or anything like that. I'm just talking about somebody might need to hear what we've talked about
Yeah.
tonight. So be in prayer for that. Um, and then, um, yeah, be in prayer that that the boy doesn't get in any more trouble.
Yeah. All right. I'll wrap it up with that, and then we'll end the episode.
Right.
Dear Lord, I just want to thank you. Thank you for just opening this space so that we were able to just talk tonight and just to share about the things that you put on Josh's heart. And I
Mhm.
pray that you just continue to just give him clarity to continue to listen to you.
Yes, Lord.
And I pray that you just bless this concert, Lord, that the people that need to show up will be there, and that people will just be able to have a night of relaxation and enjoyment, and that it will just go really well and smoothly. There will be no audio issues or just any mishaps, and that it will just be a stress-free and thing for the band where they can just do it as an act of worship and using their gifts to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to thank you for that, the way that the mindset that you have given him about that, Lord. I just pray for his family and for Trayton, that you just continue to just bless them and grow them and keep them out of trouble. And I just pray for those who are watching this, that it will just speak to them and the things that they need to hear, and that they can feel encouraged or get some new ideas about how to just worship you in their own unique ways. In your name, amen.
Amen.
All right. I want to thank you. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you, brother.
And for those who are watching, I just thank you for sitting through another episode. And the episode of Owen will be coming soon as well. I know the audio cut out on that one in the middle, but it's going to be good, just like this one is good. And the other people we've had so far have been just really encouraging stories to me. And I hope they encouraged you, and that you feel like you can be a person of the process as well. So from here, just go out there and just continue to pursue God like that.